In the 1930s near Baghdad, workers digging at an ancient site pulled up something that felt impossible. A sealed clay jar with metal parts inside. It's now nicknamed the Baghdad Battery. And the question is simple. Did it work? Because if it was truly a battery, we're not talking trivia. We're talking ancient electricity, roughly 2,000 years before the modern era. Here's what it is. A clay pot inside a copper cylinder, down the center an iron rod, the top sealed with a tar-like material, bitumen. The battery idea took off after 20th century examination, especially tied to museum worker Wilhelm Koenig, who suggested it could function like a galvanic cell. The dating is debated, but it's commonly placed in the Parthian era range, roughly around 2,000 years ago, give or take. So let's do the key thing most videos skip. What does a battery need? 2 different metals, an acidic liquid electrolyte, and a way to draw current. That's why a lemon battery works. 2 metals plus acid equals a small chemical reaction that produces voltage. Not magic, just chemistry. So could this jar do that? Yes, under modern test conditions. If you recreate the setup and add something like vinegar or citrus juice, it can generate a small voltage. Experiments have shown fractions of a volt up to around a volt, depending on the build. That's not powering a city, but it is measurable, and multiple cells could, in theory, be linked. And that's where the hype comes from. But here's the catch. Something can generate electricity without being meant to. When you zoom in on the real artifact, the missing pieces are loud. No preserved electrolyte, no clear terminals, no wires, no obvious multi-jar setup like you'd expect from a deliberate system. And if it were used repeatedly as a battery, you'd expect corrosion patterns consistent with that kind of use, especially on the iron and copper. That brings us to the flashy theory, electroplating, using low voltage to coat objects with thin layers of precious metal. It's a neat fit on paper because it explains why anyone would want tiny voltage. And it turns the story into secret ancient tech. But the evidence is thin. Ancient gilding methods existed that don't require electricity. Gold leaf, chemical processes, and if electroplating were common, you'd expect clearer workshop evidence, repeatable setups, multiple cells in context, or written descriptions. Which leads to the less dramatic, but possibly more realistic option. It wasn't a battery at all, it was a container. A sealed jar with metal parts could be used for storage or preservation. Organic, valuable, or even ritual. Bitumen seals are practical. They keep moisture and air out. And it's possible the copper and iron weren't electronics in anyone's mind, just part of an insert, support, or protective assembly for something we no longer have. Here's the real problem. The artifact is real, but the what was it for depends on context, and the context wasn't recovered with modern airtight documentation. So the fairest framing is, could it produce electricity? Yes, under the right conditions. Do we know it was intended to? No. Think of it like this. If you dig up random metals in a container, you can sometimes build a crude battery today. That doesn't prove the original owner was running a circuit. It proves chemistry will always do chemistry. The most credible middle ground is that it was a container that might have behaved like a galvanic cell accidentally if it held something acidic, without anyone using it as an electric tool. What would convince historians it was intentional ancient electricity? Terminals or wires, multiple cells found together in a clear setup, text describing the process, workshop remains that match plating or electrical use. Until that shows up, the Baghdad Battery sits in that perfect mystery zone. Real object, unclear purpose, modern imagination filling the gaps. Ancient electricity is just the headline people want. So did it work? If you mean can it generate voltage, yes. If you mean was it deliberately used as a battery, we don't have proof. What do you think it was? An intentional device, a practical container, or something else entirely? Drop your theory in the comments, and if you like historical mysteries, like and subscribe to see more. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop seeking the truth. Thank you for watching.